And so I guess we might as well call the meeting to order. 4:33. All right, call the meeting to order of the Rutland City Board of School Commissioners. Our committee of the whole meeting to discuss the mascot issue. And so note that all commissioners are in attendance with the exception of Collins and Kiefaber. And so the agenda was sent out with protocol review, Act 152, the AOE model policy, and RCPS process review and discussion are on the agenda. So I would entertain an approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. And then there was nobody that signed up for public input?
Nobody.
Okay, so we will move on. Kathy is going to review the norms or protocol review.
So debate, commentary, and discussion are healthy and open. Listening and speaking are equally important, and both should be done with respect and consideration. Focus is on students and our schools, not politics.
Okay, and then the administration sent out some information on Act 152, copy of that, which was the legislation that was passed, the model policy for AOE. So I don't know if everyone got a chance to review those, if we want to discuss them one by one, or exactly how we want to move along with our discussion in the process.
So I actually did review the actual statute or what they had come up with. But also in doing that, as I had sent out email at one point in time, I'm sure you recall, I had a concern that this was very close to home for you, being that this was something, of course, that your husband has worked to get through and get this bill passed. And I actually was feeling that it would be appropriate for you to be recusing yourself from any discussion on this matter because it is so near and dear in your household.
I think it's probably near and dear in your household as well, since you campaigned on the mascot issue. I think it's touched everyone, and I don't think that there is a conflict of interest, if that is what you're implying, so.
I will respectfully disagree. Your husband is actually one of the ringleaders in pushing this through, this bill, and so he has an additional ability to do such. And as far as this being a family matter in my home, my husband is not into politics.
I respectfully disagree on another fact. In fact, the bill that my husband proposed was in the House, and it was not even taken up by the House. This was a Senate bill that was proposed by another member of the Senate that actually made it through.
Because I do actually have information here where he actually had a direct quote in the paper about how he was going to be introducing a bill to ban the use of Indigenous American mascots, nicknames, and imagery by Vermont schools. And he goes on to talk about this in great length and actually chose on January 14th, days after the meeting, he proposed legislation that would require all Vermont schools to retire the racist mascot, nicknames, and imagery. So he actually was behind this, and that being said, because we've actually, and actually he's here right now saying he's sponsoring, of course, because we have a duty to absolve ourselves from matters that could be considered a conflict, I do believe that it is under the school board policy here that we have, let me just get.
So I'll just interrupt you here, Tricia, because school board can have a great deal to do with legislation, and legislation rules a lot of what we have. And we would not have a weighting study if school board members such as myself didn't step up and be involved in legislation. So I don't think that you can say a school board can't be involved in anything that has any legislation surrounding it. I think it is a separate matter. It is not his own bill. It had to pass by 100 votes in order to get there. It is not a personal agenda, as you like to portray it as. It is a matter that has impacted many, many people, and we sit on different sides of that discussion, but that does not mean that I cannot participate as the board chair. if you don't forget, the prior chair also spent thousands of dollars to review my process as when I was chair of the board and held meetings regarding the mascot and the change, and they spent, I believe, almost $3,000 to review 9 months of meetings that I held to show that I was fair and impartial in my dealings and followed procedure properly. So,
Would you like to add something, Karen, to this?
I would agree with what Trish is saying, and I think your presence as running this meeting, is a conflict and could be seen as intimidation to some members of the board. I think your husband was extremely involved in this. He may not, I believe he spoke with senators to get the bill rolling, and it was because of, as the paper noted, I believe in that January 14th article, that it was because you had been threatened personally over the Raider mascot issue, and that is why he decided to bring that forward. I mean, regardless of who passed it, he was the one to bring it up.
actually,
initially.
no, it was Senator McCormick, and he did not even know that bill was out there until it crossed.
So the paper
So
is
I am
not
going to
correct.
close this discussion. Unless either of you have an actual motion to make, there is, this is just playing the game. And we really need to move forward and have appropriate discussions on the topic.
So I will agree with that, and I would like to invite, of course, our school lawyer present when we do discuss this after tonight in further length, because I do feel, again, that this is an issue that you should not be facilitating.
I disagree, there's not a conflict of interest, and I will continue to preside over the board.
Okay, well, we will have the lawyer's input.
Okay, I would make a motion, that you recluse yourself from acting as chair or involving yourself in this issue before the board.
As I just stated, I will not.
Well, you said if there was a motion, then I think if it's a motion, we take a vote on it. No? Am I incorrect?
Your motion was for me to recuse myself.
Yes.
So that's to me, and I'm saying I'm not recusing myself.
No, that was to the entire board.
Then that would be a different vote. That would not be me recusing myself. That would be the board voting that I could not.
Well, we do
Take
have the
part.
Vermont state
Correct.
statutes in front of us, and it does say that if at least 3 other members put in this request, it can in fact be honored.
So it would have to be a majority vote of the board that the
3
board would
people.
have to say,
3 people. 3 people.
Can I just ask a question? As chair, do you vote?
no, I don't.
Then what is the?
But
what-
if there
what
is, if
what's
there
the
is a
point of
tie,
doing this?
she would break the tie.
And we wait till we get to that
Yeah,
point?
if you don't, if there's no
there
tie,
is
it
a
seems like
tie?
it seems like
And then
an
discuss it.
Well,
irrelevant
I-
point if we don't have a tie.
I think the other problem is that she controls the meeting and controls who gets to speak when and what your opportunity is to speak.
Again, Karen, we paid a lawyer nearly $3,000 to review 9 months of board meetings I chaired during the conflict of when this first arose. We did not pay for the past year of reviewing all the meetings that last year's chair, who you agreed with their opinion, chaired, to find out whether there was wrongdoing then. We only
Well, you could
reviewed
have
some.
made that motion as being on the
So-
board. I was not on the board at the time.
So I think that it has been proven that I have run fair and unbiased meetings on the topic, and I will continue to do so.
Okay. So for the record, please note.
I just want to review, and Kathy reviewed it, the board operating protocols. Number 1, the board will represent the needs and interests of all the children of our district, and this conversation that has gone on for almost 15 minutes now, is not representing what we're here to do, and I think that we really need to shut it down quickly. It needs to end. So,
Okay.
this is not what we're here for.
So on that note, though, I would like the record to note that I had put in a request for Allison to recuse herself. If we had 3 people that were in alignment with me, it should be valid, but because that is being prevented, this will be public record for when I have the lawyer oversee what it is that we're discussing.
First of all, you don't have the ability to, as an individual board member, to have an attorney review everything or be present at our meeting. It is quite an expense for our school board, and we have spent a lot of money on this topic already. So if you wanted to engage an attorney's opinion on this, that would, again, have to be a vote of the full board.
But you're not allowing a vote. I
If
have a
someone wants to
motion
make a
pending.
motion,
Well, I have a motion pending, and you've denied that motion.
okay, your motion was for me to recuse myself.
Correct.
So how is that a motion? Yeah.
Well, we need to know if there is a second, and then the full board would vote on it.
On whether or not I recuse myself? That's my own privilege.
Well, I think it's been enforced against other people on this board when there has been a potential conflict. And that is part of my issue, is that this board operates as to different rules for different people.
If you could elaborate on when a board member was made by the board to recuse themselves, I would really appreciate that.
I'm saying that there were differences. When I put in for committees, I was not allowed to be on the committees that I requested because the chair felt that there was a conflict because my daughter is a teacher at the high school, one out of many, many teachers. So I was not allowed to be on any of those committees.
The contract negotiations, correct.
No, as a representative of the Rutland High School, I was not allowed to be on that.
That's a little bit different, Karen, because the board chair does have the purview of producing committees. You can still participate at every committee level, as any board member can. And we've had this discussion before, and it's really kind of counterproductive for what we're here and what we're doing.
Got
Stephanie?
Mary Beth in.
Mary Beth actually had her hand up first.
Thanks. I just wanted to say that I really thought that the purpose of tonight was just to kind of really discuss and talk through this issue. I think having Allison's perspective, her historical perspective, is simply valuable. You know, this was to be a meeting where we kind of, I don't want to use a phrase like came together, but maybe came together to really do what's best for the kids. And I recognize that some of us are on opposite sides of what we feel that is. I mean, I'm not naive, but like, I felt that we, in June, when you all had suggested that we do this, it's a great idea, and now we're here, and let's do it. Let's actually allow all of us to really come together and, well, see if we can come together. Like, that was the point, right? I mean, was to see if we could find our common ground and really be able to put forward something that we can all be proud of. And I just think asking people to not be a part of that doesn't bring us together. It's counterproductive, I think, to what I thought the people who put this ad hoc committee together as a motion wanted, right? That we were gonna really do the hard work and punch it out together. So, that's it.
Stephanie?
I have now sat here, this is the third board. It's time to put this issue to bed. We need to come together as a board, stop the behind-the-scenes collusion, which has happened since day one in this conversation. It is happening now. That is based off two conversations that I've had between yesterday and today, realizing that there are still board members. I guarantee they're had enough for a quorum, so be careful, because just remember, just 'cause if you're not really being seen doesn't mean people aren't smart to what's happening. This is ridiculous, first of all. Since when is a committee meeting? Are we sitting like this? Since when do we have a committee with PEG TV here? It's a committee meeting, not a full board meeting. Why are this is just continuing the circus. And that report didn't absolve you. It said, the one question made it so you did that part right. It didn't absolve you from making mistakes. We are all human, we all make mistakes. Let's come together, just what Sarah said, and have this conversation and move on. Because this is now going on year 3. Enough is enough. There are bigger things in our district that we need to be working on, and this is far from it.
respect your desire to discuss it. I don't want to step into that. But like Mary Beth said, we have a simple task, I think, tonight. We have a law that we have to make sure we're in compliance with, and we have a policy that we have to make sure we're in compliance with. So I hope we would just take a look at the law and see what it says. Look at the policy and see what it says, because we have to respond as a district to what that's asking us to do. So it's not super complicated. We have to make sure we're clear about what they're asking us to do, and then do that, so.
So did everyone get a chance to read over Act 152 and the model policy? So Act 152 sets up the requirements for the model policy and the timeline in which to develop it. And then the AOE developed the model policy regarding non-discriminatory mascots and school branding, which the district has to adopt. And if it is not adopted, I believe by January 1st, it is assumed that we adopt the model policy. And the policy has to be at least the model policy or more stringent. Otherwise, the model policy will apply. So I don't know if anyone had any questions or discussions on the act or the model policy. If everyone's read through it, I think it's fairly clear. Mary Beth?
I was gonna say, I think the model policy is, pretty spot on. I think they worked really hard on it. Pretty straightforward. Open to discussion on it, so.
Karen?
Well, I think at this point we have three options. One would be to keep the Raider name and let the state take whatever action they choose to. The other option would be to eliminate any mascot name or symbol and simply have an R. I've seen some of the uniforms that just have the big R for Rutland. I just don't see the way this law is. I think it's very poorly written in the sense that one individual filing a complaint requires then another school board meeting. This would be a never-ending battle. And I understand that, you know, the law speaks to a certain group of people, but I think that when you talk about people's religious beliefs, anything, you know, the devils could be a problem for someone who feels religiously that that is an issue. So I just don't see where this would ever end. And I would just, you know, say, let's just do the R.
I could get behind that. I think that at this point in time, that I agree with Stephanie's take that, you know, we have been sitting through this for way too long. It does seem like there's not an ability to compromise. And that, of course, would be a compromise, but I think it would be the best compromise. I think we need to move past it. We need to end this situation.
Mary Beth?
I didn't mean to do that, sorry. Habit. I meant to raise my hand. Yeah, I think that, I don't disagree as a general idea that the R could be a compromise. I think I just take a slight issue with, it's been shown that we can't compromise when I think some new people here, you know, haven't been given a chance to see if we could find some other commonality, you know, so, this is really, like our first chance at talking about this, I think, you know, for, Karen and Courtney and Sarah and I, is that true, right? Outside of us deciding to do this in June, but yeah, oh, sorry, I'm telling Stephanie to go, I don't mean to tell Stephanie to go.
Stephanie?
But I'm gonna disagree with that, because from my understanding, your third option to this is, from a conversation that I had with a board member this earlier today, was that, you continuing with the Ravens and rebranding it with a professional. So you guys have been talking. You can't say you haven't been talking while it's not in this forum, but you have been talking to half the board. Let me finish.
Okay, yep.
In regards to this matter. Yes.
Kathy and I were on a Zoom the other night, talking about some superintendent stuff, that we needed to do. And I'm a logo geek, and I said, That's it. It was Kathy and I on a Zoom. And you can probably look, I don't tell work. This is, I did it on my Castleton Zoom. It's not recorded, but there's evidence of it there that it was just Kathy and I on there. And I did. I was like, well, and I just said, hey, whenever we're ready, whatever we're doing, I did this at Green Mountain for $0. Like, that's it. That's all it was said. So, I don't know. And it was just Kathy and I on that Zoom, okay? I swear to the good Lord, so.
Courtney?
For us new members that weren't here, can someone explain to us the process that the kids went through? I think it might be helpful for some of us new people that don't know what the kids all did, so that, like, I would hate to, as someone who's representing our community, I would hate to undermine the work that kids put into a mascot.
Can I explain it?
So, actually, I believe one of the things that was contained with the agenda was, maybe it was just a link, but in the meetings that it was discussed, did you end up doing a timeline there or just the link?
Well, yeah.
So,
Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
I was gonna say, I know there was, so initially the board, when we decided to stop using the raters, we put it back to administration to work with the student body on a process to come up with a new mascot and to bring that mascot before the board. So the high school undertook, and I don't know if you have the details of the number of students and the timeline, administration was involved, athletics, arts. Maybe you can speak more to that, Bill.
So, on that memo that I sent to you,
Oh, sorry, Bill, I missed it.
oh, that's okay, that's okay. I mean, it doesn't have the detail that Allison's referring to, but it has kind of a timeline. So on October 20th, the mascot / moniker was changed. Then we talked on November 10th about what the process is going to be. And Greg and the team at the high school developed a process to try to, understand, what's the meaning behind a mascot, what's the meaning behind a moniker, how could we possibly do this? They involved, I think any kid who wanted to be involved could be involved, and then, I don't know if Steve can help me out. Although Steve, I don't know if Steve was fully involved in it, but
I feel like they had a core of
They
like
had, no,
30
they had,
kids or
what they
something
did
that
is
were
they had a
involved.
meeting.
Stephanie, hold on.
No, Allison, if you can interrupt people, then I guess I can too.
so just to,
Then let's talk about actually, answer Courtney's question the right way. Don't give that. Tell her exactly what, the timeline of really what happened and how it happened, with the 3 votes that were skewed. Like, be truthful about what actually happened to get to the point where we did to come to the board for us to vote on Ravens.
I think
Tell
that's
the
a
truth.
matter of perception, and we're trying to deal with the facts.
Greg Schillinger put
that's-
quotes in the newspaper saying it was true and how it happened, Allison.
so they outlined the process. They tried to do a little bit of learning at the beginning to try to make sure they understood what they were looking to do. I think they got a lot of input. The charge of the board was, we're not gonna use raters anymore, and it's up to you, school, to develop a new mascot, a new name. So raters wasn't on the table, right, because that's what the board decided, and then they went through that process. I think they had, if I remember correctly, I think they kind of whittled it down to four choices. They had some votes, kids could weigh in. They got the input, I think, if I remember correctly, from RMS and RIS as well. And then it came down to, to a vote, and Ravens was the one that won, between 4 different votes. I can't remember what the percentage was, but it was, I don't know if Steve remembers. And then they brought that to the board on February 9th. Where do we have that? February 9th. We had a couple student reps from that committee talk about it, about the process. They went through the whole thing, explained exactly what they did, and that was when Ravens was proposed. So I don't know if I missed anything else on that. Do you have anything more?
That's the way I understand it.
But if you click on that link on November 9th, February 9th, you can see the whole, the whole presentation that they did.
all the schools? Just so I'm clear, did all the schools have
The high school
the
really
intermediate,
kind of,
middle, and,
the high school kind of ran it,
okay,
in the thought process behind it.
okay.
I'm pretty sure that they allowed, RAS and RMS to vote as well.
Do you know how many, was it a good amount of kids that voted?
Yeah, but I don't remember the numbers,
just
yeah. I mean, if you go to that, again, if you want.
Yeah,
that,
I
you can see it 'cause-
apologize, you guys.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I just don't remember off the top of my head, but you can see it all in the presentation, sorry.
Stephanie?
So there was a committee that Principal Schillinger was the head of. And then the first vote was open to grades 9 through 12. And then that had an other. Raiders was the number one choice at that point. And then the second vote was opened up to grades 7 through 12. But yet, there was no action, no communication, nothing. The seventh and eighth graders didn't really know the gist of it, except for what probably they were hearing from their parents. Then the third and final vote, so they could really get the numbers skewed to the way they wanted it, was opened up to grades 3 through 12. So the process, while it was open to the student body, it wasn't a fair vote. It wasn't done any way, shape, or form correctly, which is 100% the reason why I will not stand behind the Ravens. Because in the end, it was another part of this whole process being a crap show from day one. And to say that it's not political is not true. To say there's not biases behind people is not true. I would love compromise. That's what I've been saying since day one. It's not gonna happen. I would love for the three of you guys to put some magic in here as the three newest board members, but it's not gonna happen no matter what. And it's such a division, and it's even more clear continuing to be a division. So again, let's just move on. We know what the three options are, so let's just talk about those three options.
Karen?
So I think one of the points that I take issue with is I don't think this is an issue simply for the kids who are in school presently. Those kids, a lot of them are going to graduate and move on. I think we're totally excluding the taxpayers who are going to have to pony up the money, the extra money for uniforms. And so I feel like, and they're the taxpayers, they're the ones that support our school system. I think that they should be able to weigh in on.
And maybe you can answer that, Bill, but I know at least one of the surveys was public,
No, they weren't.
was community-wide. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember else, truthfully. I mean, but I will say, that as far as that vote for other, or if there was a write-in part of it, Raiders was not one of the options. And so kids who voted.
On the first one it was.
Yeah, well, it was.
There was a comment section,
Other.
and that's other, and that's where students wrote in Raider.
Yeah, but when I say not an option, I mean the board.
Because the board told you it wasn't an option.
Yes,
is what you're-
right,
right.
so, right,
Okay.
exactly.
Right.
So to say somehow we disregarded those votes, we didn't disregard the votes, so that that wasn't an allowable option.
I think that wasn't explained well to people, so that's why some people felt like, okay, this is unfair or biased because they had another vote. And I don't think it was explained that because Raiders was not an option for those who put Raiders down, it didn't count, or there was a revote.
Just for one more point of clarification, there wasn't, and I asked Greg not to come tonight, Steve was gonna check in. But there wasn't this, we're gonna vote, see what happens, oh, we don't like that outcome. We're gonna vote with more kids, see what happens, oh, we don't like that outcome. We're gonna vote for a third time to see what happens, and we don't like it, now we got the answer we wanted. That wasn't the case at all. Those votes were for allowed the middle school, who also goes by the name of our moniker, to let them have input. And it was thought that we should have input from RAS as well. Because I think throughout the district, over the past bunch of years, kids at the middle school, those teams are called Raiders. I mean, so if they're gonna pick a new name, it should include those schools as well. So there wasn't any conspiracy. They try to get input from as many kids as they thought made sense. I don't think they went to Northeast and Northwest because it's just, too young, so.
Thank
Mary Beth?
I think, Karen, maybe to address your concern, because certainly, I mean, cost is always a concern, right? So I think the law states that, you know, I mean, not that maybe, I'm not in favor of this, but that the law states, I mean, I've been an AD, I know, you know, you usually have a cycle of how you replace uniforms. And when I did do this at Green Mountain College, we had very little money. Hence why Green Mountain College is no longer here. We had very little money, and so we didn't change our entire mascot and moniker. We just went from using like a clip art eagle to like an actual eagle that was pretty cool to look at, which is why I got excited about, you know, logos. I like modern, cool looking logos. It's what I do. I teach sport marketing. So like, so we just replaced our uniforms in the normal cycle, so we didn't like have this massive expense. Like,
So some people would be wearing a Raiders
I'm not in favor of that,
uniform.
but like you could, you know, that could be.
I think that's been a problem for our teams. They lack any identity at this point, because you have people going to the football games still yelling out Raiders, some yelling out well, actually, I heard very few Ravens, but a lot of Go Red, Go Rutland. So, I mean, that's part of suggesting they just use an R and we not have,
What I think I wasn't done, actually.
okay.
Sorry, I talk slowly. I actually have a stuttering problem sometimes, so I try to talk slowly. So, right, so the idea would be, and I'm not in favor of it, but that is one way to like save money, is to go through your normal cycle. I don't, at the, you know, really poor Division III level, we got new uniforms every 4 years. I don't know what the high school does. I don't know what Mike Norman does, you know, what that normal cycle is. But there are probably teams up for new uniforms anyway, right? So.
It's coach's discretion.
Oh, it is? Okay. So, you know, so that's always a method to reduce costs and do that. I was gonna say something else about what you said. You know, change, obviously, I mean, we're not 2-year-olds. I mean, change is hard. Even just going from like clip art eagle to like cool eagle. Sorry, I was biased, of course. Some student athletes were mad at me, right? So, cause we also instituted a font that was we wanted a brand, right? A brand image and font that was the same no matter what you put on a uniform. It was always the same, so we could say, hey, yeah, we're the Green Mountain College Eagles. And so, anyway, and I still had people mad at me, which, whatever. So, years ago, I went through this when I was at SUNY Binghamton, Binghamton University. We were the Colonials when I was a student athlete there. We became the Bearcats. And all of my friends were like, oh, we should stay the Colonials. And I was like, it was a man with a gun, like, number one, like, it was a man, so we should look for something more gender neutral. But anyway, so, yeah, I mean, these, and then people, yeah, it's always going to be really hard at first, you know, and then and I know we disagree on this, but if you're doing it for the right reason, you stick through it. If it's for the benefit of the kids, which in my world, and I think for those of us on the other side from you guys, like, in our world, it is the benefit of the kids, because the research shows it's for the benefit of all the kids. And
Where are you getting that research? And I don't believe anyone has come before the board to say they object to it,
object to what? I'm sorry.
to the Raiders' name. Has anyone come before the board and said that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had tons of forums and discussion.
And
And the American Psychological Society, we had the copy of their white paper.
I mean, yeah. I used to, sorry, am I speaking?
You're fine.
Okay. I used to I mean, like I said, this is my world, this is what I do. I used to intentionally create this debate in my classrooms. I would have my students debate Redskins, I would have them debate Cleveland Indians, and they would bring research to me. And they would have to come to their own conclusions, because that's my role, is to be the facilitator, and they would come to their own conclusions. So this isn't a new battle for me, even though it's new in this board. But, so, you know, I'm a nerd. I say it all the time. I'm a super nerd. You and I have had this conversation separately on the phone. Like, yeah, I'm a political person. I do some things politically, you know, I went to meet and greets with candidates, I do things like that, but when it comes to stuff like this, like in education, you've gotta do what the research tells you to do. And, in peer review, not like, you know, oh, this news channel said it, right? Whether it's MSNBC or Fox, right? Not misinformation research, like actual peer-reviewed higher education, the cornerstone of higher education research, right? And it said it in 2005, the American Psychological Association, the APA, said that we had to do this, that it was to the detriment of kids. That's the APA, like, I mean, I don't know who else to turn to except the APA. And that was in '05, and then there's been a ton of research. I mean, that was 17 years ago. If anything, again, it's not, this isn't personal. This is like, I just think the research says this is what we need to do for our kids. And one more thing, and I promise I'll shut up for a little while. Okay. But it's not just about the Native American kids, that like when the research shows that when you maintain and keep monikers like this, that it's other marginalized populations that then also feel the negativity from it. Whether you're a racial minority, you're a religious minority, you're LGBTQ, IA+, whatever it is, like you feel it. So, anyway, I'm done. I just think that's important.
Karen?
That just goes to my point that I don't know where you find a mascot that's not offensive to at least one person. So I would still propose that we use simply the R, not heard anything else from anybody else as far as any suggestions, how to do this, how to resolve this.
Tricia?
So I'm glad you just said that. I agree in summary of what you're saying. I think that, you know, if we're looking to be inclusive and we're not going to have any potential, you know, problems down the road or somebody feeling slighted or offended, you know, we need to move on. We need to move on. Our Rutland, we can do logo work with our Rutland. The students can come up with something that speaks to them. But I think that this is the only way to put this to rest. I mean, we're not making any kind of advancement to go from the Raiders to the Ravens. It's just opening up another can of worms. And so we have to look, if we're doing what is in the best interest of the students, we would say to ourselves, let's put the Raiders and the Ravens to bed, that we are going to stick within our, because for us to say that we're trying to be inclusive and make everybody happy, we would not be garnering that by keeping or going back to the Raven name. It would not be moving forward. It would actually be, it would be putting another population that would not feel welcomed, included.
Sarah?
I'm writing down a lot of notes, so hopefully this comes out cohesively. But I want to start on what you said about the best interest of the students. And when I hear about the idea of, well, anything could, you know, anybody could get upset about anything, that makes me mad. Because yes, that is true, but the Raiders is problematic. Ooh, I'm getting emotional. I'm not gonna work myself. The Raiders is problematic, and it's proven to be problematic, and it's proven by important, peer-reviewed, trustworthy people that this is a problematic thing. Yes, there are other things that you could pick that somebody might have a problem with, but this is a problem, and this needs to go away. And the other side of that is, by sitting here and saying, well, we can't come up with anything because nobody's gonna like what we come up with, that's giving up.
That's why I'm saying the R.
I'm still talking, I'm sorry, I'm still talking. That's giving up by saying, well, let's just go with R because everybody can be happy with that. That is letting our children down. I can see, my son was in football for many years. He's not in football right now. He was on the Rutland football team. If I came to my son when he was a freshman in high school and said, well, now you're Rutland, he would have been so upset. And he agreed that Raiders was not, he had a hard time with being a Raider because he was aware of the problem with it. But if I came to him and said, now you're Rutland, he would be like, oh, that's the best you could do. And I would feel upset that I let him down. So this idea of, let's not make anybody mad, let's just go with Rutland, I have a huge problem with, because I think that's letting our kids down. I also did entertain the possibility of maybe setting Ravens to the side, because this has been, like Stephanie has said, a big thing, even though we keep trying to shut it down, this has been a never-ending thing. But I just showed Mary Beth, it took me a little while to find it on my phone, there was an article in the Rutland Herald back in, I believe it was 2020, and I'm gonna say it out, because if I don't say it, somebody's gonna mention it, and then it's gonna be a problem. My sister-in-law wrote it, but she wrote it back in 2020, and it was the suggestion of why not go with Ravens. And she talked about how she grew up in Rutland, she was a Rutland Raider, she sees the problem, sees why we should change it, and gave a really cool article about why Ravens is a cool thing. So I reread it to get her perspective again, and these are the bullet points that she wrote. And you can look it up, Rutland Ravens, Leslie Dunges, in the newspaper. Ravens are highly intelligent. Ravens are excellent hunters. Ravens are intimidating. Ravens are problem solvers. And ravens have an elevated level of communication. And that right there, just during this meeting, reading that, I said, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we could instate a new moniker with that kind of background, with saying we're excellent problem solvers, we're excellent communicators. And wouldn't that be a cool way to solve this problem, is by picking a moniker that represents excellent communication and excellent problem solving. So I am not going to vote that we let it be Rutland, because I feel like that's letting the kids down, and we're here for the kids. So we need to put aside the fact that Rutland is problematic, Raiders is problematic, we're getting rid of Raiders. We need to just agree on that. And then we need to agree on the new moniker, and that's what we need to do. And that's what's in the best interests of the kids. And personally, now, I'm reinstating my support for Ravens, because I feel like that would be a really good representation of
You can certainly.
what we want to be as a community.
Darlene? So this is only my opinion. Anybody who has a child who's in the high school, the kids do not care about this topic, okay? This is the adults talking here, okay? The kids are not being affected by what this mascot conversation. That's just the way it is. So, you can come up with 10 people that are gonna tell you how great the Ravens are. You're gonna come up with 10 people that tell you how horrible it is. I can come up with 10 people to tell you how great the Ravens are, or the Raiders are, and 10 people to tell you how horrible it is. Okay, my opinion is I'd like to get back to, we have kids that are suffering from COVID. I wanna talk about that. I don't wanna talk about the mascot anymore. Again, I feel like the kids adapt. Nobody's talking about it in the high school. Nobody cares about it. I'm gonna support that we put this to bed, and in 5 years, if you wanna bring it up and you wanna do something about it, I think that's great, but I'm voting for just having an R for Rutland for right now, because we are not gonna come together on this topic, because there are people on both sides of this that have this great argument, no matter what you do. No matter what we say here, we're gonna have 10 people saying it's great, 10 people saying it's wrong. I just wanna get on to talking about the other things that matter right now at this point, because we have a lot of things. COVID's over, or not over, but whatever. Can we
pretending it's
recoup
over.
from that? Yeah, can we try to make it over? And can we just do those things? Cause that's what motivates me to be here. And this conversation, I appreciate everybody on this board, and I appreciate everybody's comments, and I'm not saying anybody's right and anybody's wrong here. I'm really not saying that at all. And I truly appreciate what you're saying. I just want to agree to disagree, and just, can we talk about some other things that are more important for now, and we'll table it, and we'll come to it. It's not gonna go away. It's never gonna go away, even if, so if we just make a compromise, and we'll come back to it when it's the time. But I feel like right now, since we've been talking about it for so long, it's been dividing for so long, it's a testament to how people are very strongly feeling about both sides of it, which is why we can't seem to move past it a little bit or come to a compromise. And I would love to think in a perfect world that we could sit here and talk about something and come together and say, okay, we feel good about this and we all agree. In my heart of hearts, I think because we're so passionate about it on both sides, it's not gonna happen. But again, it's just my opinion about it. I just wanted to throw that out there. That's how I'm feeling about it.
Well
and-
said, thank you, Charlene.
Mary Beth?
Excuse me, I just wanted to point out, that we all do agree here tonight on the idea that maybe because of the legislation, right? But this is maybe the first time the conversation hasn't been about Raider or no Raider, it's about what do we do after Raider. And so I think, I'm an optimist, you know, I don't think that's nothing, right? I think that's something, that we can, it's a step, right? And, even if it's legislatively, motivated, what did you say? Driven, I don't know, I just think I don't want us to lose sight of that this is a better conversation than the ones that have happened in the past. And I think it's important to note that. Anyway, that's all.
Karen?
Yeah, I would disagree with Mary Beth that, we're all in agreement that the Raiders is bad and has to go.
I didn't say bad, yeah.
Well, has to go, because if you look at the River Street Bridge, it's named after General Wing, and it talks about his merry band of raiders. Not one person in this community, to my knowledge, has ever complained about that. So I think people are taking raiders as being simply the Indian symbol, and, that has gone away. They've removed everything. But regardless, so that's my compromise, is to say the R. I've not heard anybody else come up with anything other than to say they don't want the R, and it's Ravens or nothing. So I don't feel that that is a compromise. And I feel like part of my issue with doing away with the Raiders is what's next. People are complaining about statues, so we're tearing down every statue. We're getting rid of our history because George Washington had slaves. Okay, he was a man of the times. We are forgetting everything else that he did that might have been good and helpful to our country. So where are we going? Is somebody going to complain about the American flag and we're going to do away with that? We're doing away with our history, and slowly it is happening, and I find it very offensive. If you don't learn from your history, you're going to repeat it. And I think that that's where we're at. And I suggested the R because as a compromise. I'm not saying, I'm adamant it's got to stick with the Raiders. I don't see a problem with the R. And as I've said before, this legislation, as written, says if one person has a complaint about it, the school board has to address that. And then it has to go up to the state board. How much time is everybody gonna waste on having hearings to determine, why someone is offended by this? So I think that legislation boxes us in to having no logo. We do the R.
Stephanie?
So my understanding is this issue is it's gonna be an action item on for the board meeting next week. So,
Depends on,
I was in a conversation this morning, I was told that it was gonna be an action item. But my question in regard is are we going to have our new board member, sworn in, or possibly, by then? Cause I don't think any vote should be until we're a full board.
yeah, Peter's here with us tonight, hearing the conversation, and he would be sworn in at the next meeting, so, yes,
I didn't know who Peter was.
yes.
Hi, Peter.
Hi, Peter.
Hi, Peter.
Welcome. Do this already.
So Peter being sworn in.
Bill, when you're talking, would you project more, please?
Sorry, Peter.
So, no action item would be taken until he is officially sworn in, correct?
Right, he'd be sworn in at the next board meeting, so that would be at the beginning of the meeting,
Okay.
like always.
It was a thought that popped into my head that,
Yep.
we have
He has
to.
to be voted on, correct?
What's that?
He has to be voted on?
Peter's appointment, yes.
Yes.
Yep, we have to address his appointment, but that would be one of the first businesses
Okay.
of the meeting, just like other times when new members are sworn in. Kathy?
So I totally understand that becoming Rutland is an option, and I truly understand the fatigue over the whole issue. But I do just want to share that I really believe that the people who are most affected by this whole contentious argument are marginalized kids and families, and they do care. And we have an opportunity to show them that we do care by coming together and doing something really positive. And mascots are in the forum, one of the kids, I can't remember who reminded me of this, but said that you know, mascots are meant to bring people together, bring kids together, unify them with a team spirit. And so we have a chance to do that for the kids by either choosing Ravens or asking administration to go back and do another process, which I have concerns about that because of the time involved and with everything that teachers and admin have on their plate. Like, do we really want to ask them to go back to the drawing board? And so that's a topic for discussion. But I just want to put that out there, that it does matter to the people it's affected most. And we have a chance to come together and show all the kids that we care about everyone, every student.
No.
No? Mary Beth?
I just, I think to say that we're fearful of the time and that people will continually find offense with a mascot, I think, for lack of a better word, is a bit of a cop-out, because, the policy is clear that it's race, creed, color, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Or anything that's associated with the repression of others. I could do the math in my head, but somewhere near 1,000 collegiate institutions across the country have figured this out, and how to choose a mascot that is not offensive. The NCAA put the policy in place in 2005 that banned schools with offensive mascots from participating in NCAA championships. And there's nothing more valuable to a collegiate institution than on the athletic department side than the NCAA championships. So, I think we can do it. I think it's possible for us to do that because of the value of a mascot and its ability to get folks to rally around it. And anyway, that's it. I think we are capable of doing that, finding something that is, and maybe it's Raven, right? Because again, I'm fearful of not respecting the process that was in place, and I get that there's contention about whether that was a proper process or not, but, so anyway, I just think we can figure it out. Like, I think we're pretty bright humans, and we're, I think we're selling ourselves short to say that we have to stick with the R. I think we're just not giving ourselves enough credit for being able to really handle this well. That's it, yeah.
Stephanie?
It wasn't handled well. That's a proven fact. There have been administration in this. They have been quoted in the paper. So we can't go back. I don't believe that we should be going back to something that was truly flawed. The process, it wasn't a correct process. It was done with bias. And at a certain point, like, do I want to be just Rutland? No. But do the process and have it come up with how it's going to be from the start, and not change things and do things as it goes along. Like, I don't wanna give administration or, you know, whoever more work, but I just can't get behind something that was clearly flawed. And when the principal, who was in charge of this committee, goes on record and says, no, the student body really wasn't involved, then yeah, it was flawed, period, the end. You can't deny it. He said it. Done.
Tricia?
So, to summarize what you're saying, I will say that if we're going to move forward, selecting the Ravens is not going to be the answer. In essence, no pun intended, but I feel like, for people that wanna pursue the Ravens, it's like flipping the bird to the majority of the school and the taxpaying citizens. And it's just saying that truly we don't care. So our argument is we don't care about the minorities, but we don't care about the majority either. So we're in essence saying that your feelings and thoughts don't matter. So in order to move forward, we need to put the bird in the cooking pot and be done with the bird. And we need to either go with the R or have something that is an agreed upon, kind of a survey or whatnot to come up with a suitable name. However, to Charlene's point, I feel like this has been going on for so long. Sometimes you need to step away and you need to recharge. I don't think that this is an emergency. Our job truly is to be taking care of the children. And I do think that to be called Rutland and have a nice logo would be suitable for the time being. I just think we need to stop this.
I just wanna point out, kind of I don't know if oxymoron is the right word. It's a saying we need to be done with this, we need this over with, blah, 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 and then also saying, let's find another way to find another name are the exact opposite. That if we go through the whole process again and we don't put it, and we don't say, if we say we're gonna be Rutland for now and maybe come up with a new name, then we're still doing the same thing. Everyone's gonna still be talking about it, everyone's still gonna be fighting about it. That, I don't have an exact solution, but I'm just saying we need this done, and then saying maybe come up with a new way to come up with a new name are two opposite thoughts. So that keeps coming to my brain, that those are not, you can't do that in the same, that's not gonna work. So, anyway.
Karen?
So I came to this meeting with an open mind and thought that people would be suggesting something that would be a compromise. Using the Ravens when this has been a battleground, Raiders and Ravens, for the past several years. I don't think that using Ravens, there are a number of people, I believe, on this board that object to it. And I've not heard any compromise from people as to any other suggestions for mascots. That's simply why I suggested the R.
Charlene and then Kathy?
So my opinion, I don't see myself as voting for the R as maybe, I don't wanna use the word cop-out, or as letting the kids down, because I feel like my role here is to, as all of us, is to bring some sort of leadership to this, some oversight, some movement to move to the better good. And for me, it's, the better good is the other things that we're not talking about today, that we need to talk about, get the kids back up to speed. I'm not trying to, by saying I'm going for the R, is not me I don't find it as me directly saying I'm letting the kids down because I'm not picking. I'm just saying, I have a vision or more oversight look of, okay, let's deal with what's important right now for the kids and move this conversation down the road. That's the way I see it. I don't see it as a direct, what you're saying. I'm just trying to give you some perspective on maybe what's going on in my head about that. But I do understand what you're saying. But it's not, I don't see it that way. I just see it as a decision that we can make now to just kind of make a decision to talk about other things and move on a little bit, not forgetting that we have this still on our plate. And it just gives us a breathing room to maybe bring the community up to speed, bring other people up to speed on what maybe they're not thinking about, because this is a hard discussion, because people aren't on the same page as some people. So, you know what I mean? So I think everybody needs to kind of come up to speed a little bit, but I don't see it as letting people down at the moment. I just see it as, let's deal with what we need to do that's maybe more important. And I'm not saying it's not important either, so I feel like I keep eating my words. But I just want you to understand what I'm saying. Yes, that's it.
Kathy, and then Karen.
I think that just being Rutland is the same as doing nothing, and that's not closure. That's not moving forward. That's staying exactly where we are and where we have been for the past year. And I think that if we're not going to go with Ravens, then we need to give it back to administration, or we're overstepping our bounds. We're overstepping the scope of our authority by saying what a mascot has to be, because that's not the overview, the leadership. That's really the job of admin.
Agreed.
And I could get behind that. If we killed the Ravens, I would be okay with Bill spearheading with your team a fair process for the children to decide, because I have no loyalty to the Raider name. I did not graduate, but I'm here for the people, I'm here for the students, and when I feel that a process is not performed to what I would call a fair process, we all have our agreement or disagreement on that. I'm here, it's based on principle. I'm here because I am all about the principle of the situation, okay? So I am not going to change my opinion until I feel like we've had a fair shake. So going back to the drawing board and doing some kind of renaming, but if we're going to do the Ravens, it's just poking the bear, and it's showing that it is a matter of, it's a turf war. I almost feel like we're in a gang, the Raiders and the Ravens. Let's get rid of the bird. You want to get rid of the Raiders? We'll get rid of the Raiders. But we need to have a fair process moving forward to come up with another alternative.
Kathy?
So I would just like to ask, if that is the way that we decide to go, to ask admin to go back to the drawing board, so to speak, is that we come together as a board and say, what can we do to help make that the easiest it possibly can be? Because we understand you have so much on your plate. So how can we help make that less difficult for you, that process less difficult for you?
Karen?
So I was gonna suggest, I mean, back when we started talking about having a working meeting regarding this issue, I had said, I think that we're going to need more than one meeting, and certainly waiting until the end of August, when we have a meeting next week, I didn't feel was sufficient time. So I would suggest that we adjourn this meeting and we meet again, and people come back with some suggestions, because I think, you know, there needs to be some input from the board, since we're probably gonna ultimately vote on it, that the board come back with some compromises and different suggestions, and then we can put those on a ballot. But again, we're excluding the taxpayers, and I don't think that is correct. Kids are here for 4 years and then they're gone, if they're even here for that. The person who started all of this issue now lives in California, is my understanding. So, I mean, it doesn't mean there are taxpayers who have lived here their entire lives, who were Raiders and are attached to that name. So I think the board has to have input into whatever, you know, options are going to be. I'm not saying that the administration can't make suggestions, but I think this board should have some input into what the suggestions are, and then it could go out again to the students, but again, you're excluding taxpayers.
Bill. Yeah, Bill?
sorry, Peter. Here's your task, I think. The law says you're supposed to help us create a welcoming, positive, and inclusive learning environment, right? The law says you're supposed to make sure we're not using discriminatory school branding. The law says we're not supposed to perpetuate negative stereotypes. So it sounds like you're all in agreement to move past Raider.
And Ravens. I don't wanna have that rehashed.
But we're on
Well, like-
agreement on Raider.
Yeah,
is
so
what you're
step,
saying. Yeah,
step
yeah.
one,
Correct.
we can
Yep,
like go
step one.
later.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What is, no, just kidding. Wait, let me just finish it. So it sounds like we're agreeing that name has some historical connections that wouldn't allow us to go through a appeal process to the board or to the AOE that would allow us to keep it. So it sounds like we're ready to move past that. So then I think, okay, I'm gonna beg to differ. We did have a good process. The high school went through a really good process to make sure they included as many kids as possible to come up with that name, knowing that they couldn't use Raider, right? That was what was handed to the high school. You can't use Raider, come up with something different. So that's what they did, and they took, remember we started in, I think, November, December, January till February. It took a long time to do that because it took a long time to get all that involvement. So I do say, I wanna make sure we really did have a good process. If you don't agree with that, and if you wanna look into it, we can look into it. Regardless, if you, Kathy, what you're saying, if you think that we should, so you've made the, we're following what we have to do by law, you make that decision. You hand it back to us, the school administration. If the school administration says, well, we think we wanna go with Ravens, cause that's what we did, we bring it back to you, and you'd have to look at it and say, does it connect to race, creed, color, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or any of those things that would break the law. I think the kids should have the right to choose how they're identifying themselves in this process. However, maybe the school administration says, well, you know what, maybe we'll try to open it up again and try to make sure that everybody agrees on what the name should be, because we've had 2 years of divisiveness. Let's go through a renewal, a review process and see if we have something that's different. It could go either way, but I think what you're trying to do is follow the law, and you're just about there, I think. If you agree Raiders should be done, Raiders should be done. You're handing it back to us, and then we come back to you to say, hey, this is what we think it should be. Does it meet the law or not meet the law? And if it doesn't, then you have to tell us, no, that's not appropriate based on what we see the law saying.
Karen?
I just have a couple questions for Bill. So, where did the initial names come up that were on the list for the students to vote on?
So Karen, I'm gonna apologize, because I wasn't involved in any of that, right?
Oh, okay.
So, Greg and a teacher or two at the high school, and I think Mike Norman was involved in it. They developed a process where they asked kids, what does a moniker mean? What's it supposed to represent? What's the purpose of this, really? Why do we do this? Why do high schools or colleges do that? And they gave that some thought, and then I think at some point there were suggestions, right?
Okay.
Some kind of write-in suggestions. This is what we think we might want to be. I think if I remember correctly, they said, well, some of them really might not be appropriate. Let's rule those guys out. Maybe sometimes you're gonna get some joke suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
And then at some point they came down to, I think 4.
I think it was 4,
Yeah.
yeah.
Where they had a vote for those 4. Now, Raiders couldn't be an option because the board didn't allow that to happen, understandably. So, out of those 4, Ravens had, I can't remember, Courtney, I wanna say it was like, I don't know what percentage it was, but that was the one that got the most votes, and that's where they came down. That's how it came.
So my next question is, how many students voted on it?
Yeah, just like I don't want to quote the percentages, I'm sure I'm faulty. I don't remember the number. I mean, I think it was a pretty decent number. I just don't remember. And like not everybody's invested in this argument.
Right.
So I don't know if, I doubt every kid voted, I just don't remember.
But, I mean, I think that the Ravens should be off the table. That is a sign, if you do any English literature, it is a sign of death. And I don't feel that that's appropriate when you're talking about people's religions and, you know, who's this team killing? Is it, you know, they're gonna kill the other team, by using a bird? I mean, I just feel like if we're gonna go forward, then both the Raiders and the Ravens' names need to be off the table.
Courtney, first,
Courtney
okay,
was
sorry.
first, and then-
I was looking for the minutes from,
I just wanna
the
make sure
meeting
I'm
when they did the
understanding.
summary.
So our purpose is to strike Raiders, to be in compliance with the law.
Be in
That's all
compliance.
we have to do. We don't have to make a decision on whether we're Ravens or R or whatever. All we have to do is scrap Raiders and then give it to you, and then you guys decide.
No,
eventually it has to
No.
come back to us.
It'll come back to us,
Exactly.
but for the purpose of this right now is that.
right, but if we're not going to make some ground rules, and with the understanding that Ravens will not be on the list, then we're not gonna move forward, because when you come back to vote on it, it's going to be the same. My objections are not gonna change, and I feel like this is just a power grab in the sense that it was Raiders, then it went to Ravens, then it went back to Raiders, and now we wanna go back to Ravens, and I feel like both, if you're gonna say Raiders are inappropriate, then I think Ravens needs to go, and either this board or the administration come up with some appropriate names, that are not offensive to anyone, and good luck with that.
Mary Beth?
I think, you know, we're policy governance, right? That's what we do. And so, one, I think we have to adopt the model, we have to develop a policy maybe first, maybe not first, maybe that'd be better to adopt the policy first, and maybe we just say, hey, the model's great, let's do it. I mean, I think I don't know. We have to have something that's that or more stringent, so, and I highly doubt this board would, you know, it would help bring us together if we went more stringent. So let's go with the model policy, let's talk about that later, but we develop a policy, and that's the policy, right? And so, in accordance to that policy, then Raider has to be retired permanently, right? Because of the historical connection to non-inclusive, non-inclusivity, right? And then, right, so then I think it's up to the admin to go from there, right? So,
That's what
yeah.
I'm wondering, like, it might be a waste of our time to keep belaboring this.
because
if
they
all we're
implement our
supposed to do-
policy, right? Yeah. They,
Welcome to the last 3 years of this conversation.
So the thing is, it does have to come back to the board. In the case of South Burlington, the Vermont Supreme Court did rule the mascot was under the board's jurisdiction. So whoever we want to come up, ask them to come up with a mascot, whether it be administration or 5 people from the street, it's been shown that the final decision rests with the board.
Okay.
So it
Forgot-
does have
okay,
to come
alright,
back to us,
that's
but,
helpful, yeah, okay.
how it gets there, you know, there's plenty of options. Tricia, did you have your hand up before?
Well, you know, I kind of lost my train of thought, I could be
Sorry.
honest.
That's why I write mine down over here before I say them.
Notes.
It'll come back.
Yeah, it'll come back to
Yeah.
me.
Stephanie, other than-
Stephanie?
yeah.
So why don't, since, again, I mean, I think the only we've decided that, you know, the Raiders need to go. That's about the only thing I think we're gonna accomplish in an hour and 15 minutes now. I believe at this point, we send it back to administration, and there should be something more public to include, while the students, you know, have a vote, but the taxpayers, some have a very wide, you know, community, put a survey out to the community as well, and just get the taxpayers, because in the end, they're the ones who are funding this, no matter what way we shape it, they're funding it. So, but, I mean, we need to come up with whatever our next solution is, so we can, because we're just leave today.
Karen?
Well, I would just say that I think that it should be up to this board to come up with 4 or 5 names, suggestions, and then it go
works
out to
too.
the administration. because ultimately it's going to come back to us. So if there's nothing on that list or that we can agree upon, we're going to be in the same mess. If the board has input into what the names are, then the administration can put that out. And I would agree that this needs to be more than just the students in the schools. I think it needs to include taxpayers and some of the general population. So I think that there are ways that we could do it. For example, put something, a survey at the city clerk's or the city treasurer's office, the library, where you might get some public input.
I was gonna say, we're not the first community to do this, that's for sure. So maybe there's some things, I'm an administrator, I just steal, right? You just steal ideas. Coaches don't steal, they don't share, but administrators steal from each other and share all the time. So there's got to be, if we are committed to the idea of being, it including more than the students, then, there's gotta be some model way to do this out there, that we could look at.
I know what I want to say.
There it is.
We actually, the limitation, I believe, at the start of this was that we were trying to use R, and so they were the Railers, the Rams, the Royals, or the Ravens. Yeah, I want to forget the name. So those were the four things, but they were all R because we were trying to repurpose forms. I think that we might find our creative juices being stimulated if we don't contain ourselves to the R name at this point in time, realizing this is a process that as the uniforms are getting expired, we then will transition. So I think that that's gonna be less of a limitation, and that we might actually be able to get behind this and really feel it and embrace a new name without the restriction of the R.
Kathy?
So, I just the one common thing I've heard from everyone is wanting to move past this, and that the contention fatigue. And having our board try to come up with 5 possible mascots, to me just seems like a breeding ground for arguing. And if we all truly believe that we want to move forward and work on issues, spend our time working on other issues that really need our attention, we would just hand this over to administration. And we really, they are the experts. This isn't our job. We have a lot we can learn from the experts. And to ask to be included in the process, to have, a seat at the table, I think is totally fair. But to decide that we're gonna run the process, it doesn't jive with the goal, in my mind, it doesn't jive with the goal of wanting to move forward and lay this down, our board to just lay this down until it comes back for final vote.
Just if I could, I did find the meeting minutes for some of the questions for the student involvement in the mascot. The minutes, of course, are a little bit brief, but 3 students discussed the process in selecting a new mascot, which included a complex 3-month-long process of weekly meetings, committee formation, criteria development, suggestion and narrowing, student voting runoff. It was noted the committee looked both at the positive and negatives of all options, and the core standards were applied by the students on the committee. So that was the kind of summary of their process, which it was fairly extensive because it was 3 months with weekly meetings, and that they did have the multiple votes for a runoff purpose, as Bill had spoke about.
Nice job,
So-
Betty.
And then Karen?
Yeah, I really get tired. I mean, I've only been on the board since March, but all I hear is, that's not the job of the school board. Well, I don't have the time. I mean, I think you make a commitment when you come on the school board, that you have to commit some time. And I think, my expectation was that we would have meetings at least twice a month, plus the committee meetings. We have usually one committee meeting for each committee during the month. I mean, we haven't met in almost 2 months. That this is not going to be extensive time for you to think of what you might suggest as a mascot. I mean, I came with something that could be a compromise. Obviously, you don't like that. Then I think that people need to come up with things. I mean, certainly the administration can have input. I mean, Bill can come up with 4 or 5 names. But I think then we're starting on the right foot, that we've agreed to all of the names, or at least being on the list. Then the list goes out to the students and out to the public. We collect those, and then we go from there.
But can we please be mindful of administration's time on this, please? Because that's another thing too. I realize we want administration to go out and do all these things, but I think we've spent a lot of time, administration has spent a lot of time going back to doing, you know, so many things. We had a committee asking administration to come back with, you know, when's the uniform turnovers, and when this, and this, and this, and it was just a lot. It just seems like a lot of time and effort that's being spent, and so I want us to, we can't seem to agree, so then it goes on to administration to keep coming back with stuff, and so if we can come with a directive that's maybe a little more narrow, so they can just get to the point with what they have to do, I guess then that's what you're gonna come up with, but I feel like it's just another round of what we've already done, so I'm afraid of that, that's all, so.
And I volunteer to assist the administration in any of this process that they may need help on.
Sarah?
So kind of bouncing off what Charlene said a little bit, I'm also wary of giving administration more to do because they have too much to do already. But also, I'm wondering, is it beyond our, like, yes, being on the board is a huge commitment, and yes, we need to be here for everything to be involved, but also we need to be wary of overstepping our bounds. And is it overstepping our bounds to be the ones in control of picking the names and telling the
We're not
schools this is,
controlling it.
the names that they have to choose? I'm just wondering about that, but also, in respect to administration's time and going back and forth and this dragging out, I like the idea of, you sort of alluded to it, Charlene, of having a clear directive, like, we're giving this to you, and then we as a board need to come to the understanding that when they come back and say, this is what we have, this is what this, whoever we went to, the kids, the community, whatever, this is what we've decided are our choices. Do you agree that these choices are both? We as a board need to agree. We're gonna take what they bring us. We're gonna look at it from this statement. Does it agree with this?
Law.
The what?
The law,
Thank you.
the policy,
That was
yeah,
the word.
yeah,
The law,
yeah,
the
law, policy, whatever, yeah.
This is our job. We take what they give us, we compare it to the policy, we say, yes, this agrees with it, no, this doesn't agree with it. And then our next step is a very clear step, whatever that step is. If we choose that, then there won't be constant discussion, and we won't keep giving it back to administration, because we'll have a very clear objective. We'll know when they come to us exactly what our job needs to be and exactly what the conversation needs to be. So I think if we hand it back to administration, our next step as a board is to come together and agree, this is how we're gonna act when they come back to us with information. This is what we're gonna decide on. This is how we're gonna vote. This is how we're gonna compare. That's what we need to do as a board, is know how we're gonna react to the information that comes back to us, if that's the road that we go down. That's just what I'm thinking, so.
Karen?
I feel that that's simply a way of getting the Ravens' name on the ballot again and getting the Ravens approved. And I feel like, as we've said, if we're gonna get rid of Raiders, then we get rid of Ravens and we start over again. And that's why my suggestion that people come back, so that's not put on the administration to have to come up with 4 or 5 names that we may not even approve at the end, or students might not like. So this is just a way to get what you want of keeping the Raven name.
I would just like to clarify that nothing that I just said had anything to do with ravens. I was suggesting if we give it back to the administration to come up with whatever they come up with, that we have a clear set goal after that. I wasn't even thinking about ravens. I was just thinking about helping the administration streamline their process of getting a new moniker. That's just my clarification.
Any other discussion?
I did that again, sorry.
I mean, I find it kind of difficult to facilitate these conversations, because half our conversations are about how we don't want to be having the conversation. So I think, you know, moving forward and the next steps, people need to be mindful of that. If we spend a half hour of every time we discuss the topic, talking about how we don't want to discuss about the topic, but then deciding we have to have another meeting to discuss the topic, it really makes moving forward and, having the conversations much more time-consuming than they need to be. And, you know, this might not be something that's resolved with a unanimous decision. This may come down to a vote, and people need to move forward whatever direction the vote is. So, you know, those are certainly things to consider, but certainly deciding we need to talk about it again, or we need to do this about it or that about it, prolongs the process. And I don't think it's a matter of time and service to the board. It's a matter of time on the topic that is just the same back and forth.
I echo off what you're saying. Like, I think our role is way more simple than we're making it out to be. Like, we have a law, we have to answer to it, and then we give it back to the experts, and then they come forward with an answer. It shouldn't be about like, well, I'll give up this if you give up that. It's not about us. It's about us taking whatever administration brings back to us and dealing with it. If the school wants to be Ravens, Rockets, whatever, then we should respect that and follow suit. I don't think it should be about my agenda or my parents' agenda or where I went to high school. Like, I grew up a Raider. I hear people's fight about it, but I think, like, we are making this way more of an issue than needs to be. We have a law, we need to follow it. We'll give it back to you. You come back to us, we vote on what you've decided. I don't know why we have to belabor this, and it feels to me more simple than we're.
Sure.
It's simple, right, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Mary Beth?
Is it obnoxious to make a motion to adopt the model policy?
I think we can in
We
this
can't.
meeting.
This is
Oh,
in-
we can't in
Right,
this meeting.
because it's
A
ad hoc
committee.
committee, so,
I wanted to accomplish something.
yeah. We could put it,
we did. I think we did. We were like.
Oh, I know,
willing to
I know,
vote
but
on
like,
But we
you know,
could-
emotion, I meant, like a thing,
Oh,
yeah,
a stroke of business.
yeah.
we could put it on the full board meeting.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought that's what we were doing tonight, sorry.
It's confusing, it's committee of the whole.
We could try that.
Are you air high-fiving?
I know, I didn't
Oh,
know,
I hate that.
I
I'll
actually
do
thought
that
you were
too.
air high-fiving me, I'm like, yeah, Bill.
Bill, and then Kevin has joined us.
Such a dork.
I just want to say, this is a challenging argument. We've talked about it for 2 years, but that's not too unusual for this kind of a discussion. You know, when you talk about high schools around the country or colleges around the country. And I appreciate a good civil discussion to try to work through the problem, and you all helping us create a welcoming, positive, inclusive learning environment. That's what we're looking for you to help us with. That's what we're charged with. So I appreciate the fact that you're doing that through this tonight. I know it's hard, but we will eventually get there.
Kevin?
Can we, I'm sorry, I
Welcome.
got the time wrong. In regards to putting together a policy, can we put out a proposal and not vote on it? Or is there already,
There's a model policy
okay.
from the state, so
But is
we
there
have to,
anything we want to,
we would have to make it more stringent or adopt that.
Why reinvent the wheel, you know? It's a good policy.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, truly.
We have to adopt that or something more, right, so it's.
Or something more
so I think
stringent,
we-
or January 1st, they assumed we adopted that,
Yeah.
and it applies to us. So, anything else?
Is it, you know, is it within our purview to simply ask Bill? And I don't wanna put you on the spot.
Oh,
I mean,
no.
maybe I'll just stop there. You know,
Never mind.
given your face, or,
I'm
you know,
just-
I
I'm
mean,
kidding, I'm kidding.
or maybe, you know, like, your time is so valuable, right? It's extremely valuable, and you know, Steve, everybody's time is extremely valuable, all the principals, all the admins, all the teachers, who may or may not be involved in another process, you know, so, I think, do you have a preference for really how it's handled, you know?
I think I'd go back to what Courtney was saying, like, if I look at the law and look at what it says you are supposed to do, you're supposed to assess whether we have a racist or you know, a mascot that doesn't fit that description. And if it doesn't fit that description, then you have to send it back to us, to the schools. And then we have to then bring it back to you and say, you know, this, we would like it to be this, or, you know, or we like it to be what it was before, or we'd like to go through a whole process and here's what it is. But I think, like you said it, Mary Beth, I think with policy governance, I think your role is really to make sure we're meeting the law in the state's policy.
Karen?
So I had a question for Bill. So are you saying that you're going to come up with suggestions as far as names, or the administration is going to, and then put out the survey, or you're going to put it out to students again and have them go through the whole committee and their meetings to come up with names and then do a survey, or what is your plan on how to do this?
Well, if you, can I just, sorry, if you're following the policy and decide if let's say it's next week that we say, okay, we decided, the board decides that this current name is not appropriate, I think it has to go back to us, Karen, and then we have to decide, so what do we do? Like, what is?
Well, that's just what I'm asking, because,
Well-
you know, I've heard people talk about your time being valuable. So if we came up with the names, then I think that saves you that amount of time, and then you have to just do the surveys. But I did have another question, because on the model policy, it talks about the appeals have to be filed within 30 days of the school board's decision by sending a written notice of appeal to the Agency of Education. But then it does not say how long the Agency of Education has to respond to it. Do you have any idea if there is any, or no, there's no timeline for them?
I don't see it there, so I don't see it there or in the law, so I'm not I don't know how long they would have.
Okay.
I just say one more thing. I do think that part of the purpose of having a moniker or a mascot, or, you know, some guy in a stuffed costume running around, is to promote welcoming, positive you know, there's a fun aspect to it. You're bonding together. You're saying we are all on this team, and we all belong. And so I have no doubt in my mind that students should have all the voice in that, or a major voice in what that is, as long as it's appropriate. Like, we can't have something crazy. But you know, I think when Charlene says, you know, some people didn't care about the argument, right? So we want to get them to care about, what do you guys want to be? What do we want to? How do we want to represent ourselves? It's a great school community, Rutland High School and Rutland Middle School, RS. Those kids really have a good climate and culture that feel like they belong. If a moniker or a mascot helps build that even more, that's good. But they have to have the ones that say it. I don't know if we can. I couldn't come up with something that's. I don't know why I would pick the Steve Sampsons. We could have that as mascot. It'd be a good mascot. But it should come from the kids.
Can I offer also that this has become, unfortunately, through media, through all of this process, Raiders versus Ravens. You know, and so you want the community to get behind something. I'd hate to think that you're gonna choose one or the other, however it goes, but somebody, there's a line's been drawn in the sand in the community with this whole entire, because it's been going on for so long. You know, that's why I also think it's a good idea to maybe pick something different. I don't know, because that way nobody has to feel like they're getting slighted, and people that support the boosters, people that, monies that are coming in, people will still support because they're not feeling like they're on the other side of whatever we decide. You know, I just
The Rutland redo?
just start and do something that
Okay.
maybe doesn't seem like a side was picked. And unfortunately, it's just the way the process went this time, that's all. Because of the media and our long talks about it, and it's just the nature of how it all kind of fell into place at this point. So I'm just thinking about maybe another reason why, if we had something different, maybe someone's not gonna say, well, I'm done. I'm not, I don't want people to be done, you know, and I want the kids to be engaged as well, you know, because they weren't, I feel like a lot of the kids are not engaged in this process maybe, and it could be because of how this whole thing kind of shook out. Mary Beth?
So, yeah, I'm with you, Charlene, and I think that again, the optimist, I think we're so close to being in agreement that it will revitalize the excitement behind it, as opposed to making it so negative. Is that kind of what you're saying too? I don't know, I'm not putting words in your mouth,
Yeah,
but
I'd
I
like
think,
to-
I think because maybe we're, you know, I think some people came in tonight with I'm excited, to see what could come up, and to be honest, I'm not super pro Raven. I don't know. Except that I wanted to be respectful of the kids, like you said, you know, of the previous process. But so I'm not pushing that in any regard. I'm not. And so, but I think it's important. Well, and again, it's going to be hopefully up to a process that Bill and his team determines. But it would also probably be important that, well, if that process produces a Raven as an option, we let it, listen, hear me out, okay. We let it ride and maybe have it float and fly away all on its own, right? Because it's not as popular. Sorry. I didn't love your analogy before, but now I'm going with it, Tricia. You know,
I'm ready to flip the bird.
I
The
know,
community
I
does
just,
not wanna see
I
the
just want it to
bird.
fly away, okay,
Yeah.
but not that I don't, if Raven came before us, fine, if it didn't, you know, but I'm just saying, if it might be nice to see it naturally go away, or naturally come back, based on the kids, right? That's what I wanna see, I think if we say definitely we can't, I did not mean to pound the table. I did not mean to pound the table. I've been lifting, no, okay. I've not been lifting. You know, if we say it can't be there, I think that is maybe overstepping just a little bit, right? So we just let it either naturally fly away or naturally come on back and sit on our arm. I was gonna say, yeah, Bruce, I don't know. Do you follow that logic? I'm not pushing it. I'm not but we can't sit here and say the kids can't pick the Raven. I just say I don't think we can say that.
It may be very suspect, though, I'm just saying, if we really wanna move past this and just.
Well, we just hands off it, you know, we just say, hey, on next Tuesday, we adopt this policy, we say Raiders gotta go, and then we organically trust the people, Bill, who is our one employee, to handle it, correctly, so, yeah.
Just on that note, also, a quick, I am not pushing Ravens. I was trying to find a new way to use something that I also felt was a little tainted, but I love the idea of being able to release control within as our job is to release control to the administration and let them do it the way they do it, which is our job. It's not putting off our job, it's doing our job. And I'm gonna get a little not preachy, but I've been living by this creed lately, that is, give us the wisdom to, oh God, now I can't say it. God grant us the
Serenity.
to accept the things we cannot change, the wisdom, accept the things we cannot change, the courage
To
to
change
change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Oh my
yeah.
gosh, I say it 3
That's
times a week every week, but
That's okay.
yes. So this might be a thing that we cannot change, what the children in the community want. Our job is to just say, yes, that abides by the policy, or no, that does not abide by the policy. So in releasing control, we might find a new invigoration of, a new excitement in, like, whatever comes out of that. And I like the idea of, it might go away, it might come back, but our job is to just see if it goes with the policy. So I am not pushing Ravens, I am pushing a community-wide happy ending to this situation. So that's what I would love to see.
Karen?
So what you're saying is then if it's voted Ravens, then the board is expected, because the students chose Ravens, you know, how many ever of the students might want Raider or want Ravens, then we're supposed to just adopt that because that's what the students want.
I would say if this goes back hands off to the students, and the students come back, you, like, in a large voice and say, we want to be the Rutland Ravens, our job is to do what's best for the students.
What's the large majority? And why do the taxpayers not have any input into it?
I'm saying release control to the administration, they will come back with what the students want, and we will decide if that goes with the policy or not. That's what I'm saying.
And again, I think that's shirking our responsibility, because we want to take a hands off everything. I'm really not sure what the intent of this board is, or what the duties are, because they seem to be pretty few and far between.
Just if I could clarify, we're a policy governance board, and that's how we're set up. So, Kevin?
A few nights ago, I woke up at about 3 o'clock in the morning with this idea about, you know, what is it that I'm proud of about being from Rutland, and what are the things that have made me feel most connected with this community? And I thought about, like, I had a list that I haven't been able to find today, that included all sorts of volunteer efforts. Project Vision, I mean, our community was identified nationally as, this group has a drug problem, and we came up with this far-reaching community organization to address those problems. The Gift of Life marathons, we donated more blood than Boston. I mean, there are some amazing things that this community does. The response to Irene, I mean, there were neighborhoods, I mean, I didn't have any problems at my house, but there were neighbors 2-3 blocks away who had this much mud in their yard. And there were all sorts of volunteers that came out to dig people out, and I mean, that was huge. The trails and bridges up in Pine Hill Park, I don't know if you haven't been up there. I mean, I remember a day where there were 60 or more of us that showed up in the middle of the woods to build a 100-foot suspension bridge. That's a freaking amazing piece of architecture in the middle of nowhere. The Wonder Feet Museum, I walked in there the other night at Friday Night Live and I was just floored. I mean, that's an all-volunteer organization. There are things that, when Rutlanders get together, we can do amazing things. And that's the spirit we need to get into or latch onto to make this thing work. And it's not about, I mean, we gotta let go of a lot of the animosity that's been driving this whole thing. And I missed the whole discussion before, but it seems to me letting the kids decide and then we move on from there is the way to go. But if we can just remember, if we're all pulling together, we do amazing things.
I agree with that 100%. But these great people that are in this community that are doing all these good things, though, there's a large group of them that don't think Raiders is a bad moniker.
Right.
That's the issue that we have. And I hear what you're saying, but that's the issue that we're having here. That's why this has been a 2-year thing now, because we keep talking about it, because there's a whole group that don't feel that way.
But
And how do we do something to move forward in the spirit of everyone's beliefs? You know, there are the same people feel the same way about the Ravens. You know what I mean? They have their feelings about that, and they want to talk about how they feel about that. It's exactly what we were talking about. Our role here is to make sure whatever moniker is picked follows the policy.
And
think.
unifies everybody.
Well, but the bottom line for me in this whole discussion has always been, we can't have a mascot that makes people feel excluded and alienated. And Raiders has done that for many years. And it may only be to a minority of people, but still, everybody needs to be able to go to school and feel like they belong there.
And I understand that.
And that's the bottom line for me.
Karen?
But we're back to majority versus minority. I mean, so what is being said here is that the majority doesn't matter because we're only going to focus on the minority. And Raiders, for a lot of people, is not connection with Indians. It's connection with people going in and stealing maybe the ball or getting involved. I mean, so yes, people in this community are wedded, a lot of people, to the Raider name. So I would say if you're going to then insist on Ravens being on there, then we put Raiders back on. With a different connotation, maybe we come up with a different mascot for it.
Courtney?
You have to remember people's intentions, right? I don't think even people that like Raiders, no one's intention was, I'm a villain and I want to make people feel not included. I don't think any of that was done maliciously. Same with Ravens. I don't think there's malice in any of us or people in the community. Unfortunately, it's become this, like you said, there's a line in the sand, and like if you pick one side, then you're mad, like someone's gonna be upset. And I think we all come here with the intention to do what's right for this board, and our intention and our mission is to uphold policies for the children. So I think, again, and we keep saying this in different ways, we follow this law and give it back to our administration, trusting that they will come forward with what's the best representation of our children, because that's why we're here. And then we vote on that based on the law. Like, I think we're forgetting, like, that it's, you know, we need to stop vilifying people that like Raiders, because no one, I was a Raider, and at no time was I ever like, haha, I'm a Raider, like I want to offend somebody, you know, or I want to exclude people. That's not what that was about, and I think that belief has really continued the divide, and so I think we have to take the emotion out of it and just trust our employee to bring forward what represents our children.
Kathy?
I don't hear anyone here saying that they are tied to Ravens. No one has said that they're, myself included. Like, it goes to administration, and what they come back with is what we evaluate against the policy. There's no, like, undercurrent of anything to get.
Well, I wish I could believe that.
Well, it's, no one here is saying that they're, you know, that they're gonna insist that it be Ravens. I haven't heard anyone say that here. And so I've gotta believe everyone is being honest.
Karen?
So it appears that we're gonna dump this on the administration to take care of for the board, so I would move to adjourn. I mean, we've been here almost 2 hours, and we have finally decided to give it back to administration. So I don't feel like another 2 hours of discussions is gonna be productive.
Mary Beth?
Wasn't gonna move it, but
Okay.
I don't disagree that we should be done. But I disagree that we're dumping anything. I think Bill stated that's kind of how the process should work, and I feel actually pretty good about the conversations we've had tonight and the honesty we've had, and I think we're much closer to a more inclusive and, an inclusive community that is brought together a little bit brought closer together more than we were before. And so I think it's been a good meeting. I think it's been, I think we stumble as we go through the 2 hours, but we end up here. I'm okay with the 2 hours because I think we're at a spot where we're like, okay, the policy is pretty clear. I think the word perpetuate is what really makes us have to get rid of Raider and not just rebrand Raider. So that's the word that always stuck in my head, is like, you can't perpetuate, and keeping Raider would perpetuate non-inclusivity. We're in a good spot. We're moving beyond Raider. I don't hear anybody here, I mean, I know you spoke in favor for a little bit, I mean, nobody here is saying it's gotta be Raven. I think we're in a really good spot to bring some people together. So I didn't wanna end on that note, that's all.
So, and then I think just from prior discussion, we will likely have the model policy on the next agenda for the first reading. So we still have to go through the two board meetings to become official policy, but that doesn't stop any other decisions. So.
Will we have the vote?
Retiring Raiders, yep, we could if someone wanted to motion on that, because the policy can be an action item for that as well. So, Stephanie?
I just ask that if we're putting it back onto administration, that they do involve, whether it be in regards to a survey, the community as a large. I mean, in the end, the taxpayers are the ones who put us all here, and we're the ones who are making the decision, essentially, the final decision, whatever it may be. But the taxpayers are funding it, the taxpayers pay what they pay, and the community, it should not be just the student body, it should be the community at large as well.
And just for that, I mean, we could check with Greg, but I swear that there was an initial survey, it was blank, you had to put reasons of why it would be a good mascot, and it was open to the public, so you had to give your suggestion, and you had to list, like, I don't know, 2 or 3 reasons as to what it exemplifies and why that would be a good mascot. So there was community outreach, and then it was narrowed down, and then those are the 2 surveys.
Where were they?
I submitted a suggestion.
Yeah.
Where was this put out to the public?
I think Google poll, Google Docs, it was a Google poll, and.
It was announced on the website, on the school district website, it was.
Yeah, and Rob's
I
nodding
think
his
we
head, so I'm
also-
like, I swear there was one, because I thought I put a suggestion
I
too.
think
My
we-
rhinos didn't make it. That was really Peterson's.
I think
Mr.
that
Peterson
there is a
put it out.
large portion of our population who are not necessarily computer savvy, who don't, do Google or every other, thing. They may not even have a computer. So I don't think that went to a majority of the taxpayers. So I'm just saying, I think if you put some out at City Hall, the treasurer's office, the library, places like that, where the general public is going, is that we would have some public input.
How do we ensure that they're authentic taxpayers and recipients of our school system?
How do we assure that these are actual students that are filling these out? And one student doesn't go and photocopy it and make 25 ballots.
That's the beauty of online. They're all linked to email addresses.
And we know that we can't make a fake email, right?
So it was all done on
Not a school-based
computer?
one.
I thought there
Well,
were
and it's
paper
also how
ballots,
do
was
you
my
know
understanding that went out.
has the vested interest.
I don't think
We
so.
don't want
I
just
think it
any
was-
Tom, Dick, or Harry wing, and we want people in the community
I'm
and our
offended, and you
students
should
and
put a
stuff.
women's name in there too.
Tom, Dick, Harry, Mary, okay?
So we still have my motion to adjourn here.
Kevin?
I was gonna say, have we had a second for Karen's?
No. Is that a second?
A second? Yes.
I just got here late, so I'm not
Yeah.
gonna fall off the party.
All right.
I'm still having
We
fun.
missed you, Kevin.
Feel free. Were you gonna vote on something?
No, I don't know.
Karen made a motion to adjourn.
Oh, okay.
Voting on adjourn.
So,
Right up till you're ready.
so do we have a second?
No one wants to go home.
All right.
Yeah, we
So do we have more conversation?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right,
Okay.
we're done.